for coming. If at any point you have any questions, feel free to chime in. If it's easier just to type in the window, Benji will keep track of questions we have, and we'll make sure we leave plenty of time at the end of this for questions. Hopefully everything will get, most of the things you have will get answered as we go through, but definitely keep track of them yourself or type them in. And Katie, you are muted. I cannot hear anything in your office, so you're all set. So welcome to the webinar here about the Vermont Mentoring Surveys. I'm just going to get going. So the goal really today is to introduce everybody to Vermont Mentoring Surveys as they exist now, the revised version. Talk about how to implement the surveys for your program, and then make sure we have time to answer any questions you have. Real quick rundown of the agenda. We'll do some quick introductions. We'll do a breakdown of sort of the history of the Vermont Mentoring Surveys, the reasons behind wanting to conduct surveys, especially the Vermont Mentoring Surveys, the revisions we made, and then really get into the conducting of the surveys and how to administer them. And then some time for questions. So for people that are joining, if you're on your computer and don't have earphones in, try to mute yourself if you can. When you're not talking, you can just click on the little mic icon on the attendees list, and that will help keep down the background noise. So for quick introductions, we have myself, Chad, and then Benji's here as well. And then we have Heather Boucher, who's a board member of ours, who works for Linden State, who is the resident expert in terms of surveys and evaluations that's been working with me in the Program Leadership Council, which has been a great resource for us to have working along with us. And she'll chime in as we get going along certain aspects of the evaluation. And so Leslie, I'm just going to put you on mute just to make sure.
Oh.
So as we're going through here, just a quick rundown of who's here. I'm just going to read people off, and instead of having everybody sort of chime in, we have Bobby Joe from the Mentor Connector. We have Catherine Shahan from Moncton and also Community Friends, the Howard Center in Chittenden County. Diana Ferguson from Essex Chips. Jackie Fisher from Ottaquechee down in Woodstock area. Karen Browning and Leslie Ward from Grand Isle. And then Katie Miller from Milton. So we've got a good crew, and I know a handful of folks said they're going to watch the video as well. So Benji, you want to hop in real quick and just do a little bit of the history?
Sure. Thank you, Chad. So before we really get started with the webinar here, we wanted to give kind of a quick breakdown of how we got to this point and sort of where the surveys came out of. So way back in 2011, when Mobius was in the process of turning into the statewide mentoring partnership, when mentoring programs and supporters and funders from across the state came together, we decided that one of the key areas that we were looking to address as a state was looking at collecting common aggregate data on the success of mentoring matches. And so the mentoring programs and funders agreed that being able to look at mentoring trends in aggregate form would really help programs better evaluate themselves and their matches, and also just provide proof of the positive benefits of mentoring to make the case for future funding. So during the transitional period when Mobius was becoming a statewide partnership, there was a committee that came together made up of Vermont mentoring practitioners, so experienced program staff from across the state, Mobius staff, which was me at that point, and the Vermont Mentoring Funders Collaborative, which was a coalition of funders that merged with Mobius when we became Vermont's mentoring partnership. And we worked together to develop a standard mentoring evaluation system for mentoring programs. So the committee brought together feedback from programs across the state, and so we looked at in total around 20 unique survey sets that different programs were using. We also looked at surveys that Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership, had put together, as well as research by the Search Institute and the Developmental Assets. And we decided to look at creating a survey system that evaluated the effects of mentoring relationships from 4 different perspectives: the mentee, the mentor, the parent or guardian, and then the mentee's teacher or counselor. And so and then we decided also to look at this from 3 different intervals: before the mentoring match, during the match, and after the match concluded. And so the whole process was a great way to really bring together different perspectives to really look at different evaluations that existed, but try to find some common ground and put together a common evaluation tool. It was a lot of different programs involved. I'll give a specific shout out to Jackie Fisher and Wendy Friedlich, who were really directly involved with me as we were coming up with those common surveys at that point in time. And the final product of this work was what we released last year as the Vermont Mentoring Surveys in March 2014. So these were widely distributed to programs throughout the state, accessible both through the Vermont Mentoring database and also as printable PDFs for users who weren't using the database. And I'll pass things back over to Chad so that he can kind of talk about where things are over the past year and how we've gotten to the point where we're at right now.
Great, thank you, Benji. So we launched those in the spring of 2014 and got a lot of feedback from mentoring programs using them. We'll get a little bit more into what's changed. But in the fall of 2015, the Program Leadership Council and Mobius got together and worked on revising the surveys. And what you're going to see today is the revision that we are launching this month. So continuing here, just getting a little bit more into the conducting the early surveys. Really, it's really important that programs are doing this just to be able to gather program feedback. These surveys are not designed for Mobius to evaluate how mentoring programs are doing. It's much more just having programs be able to gather feedback from their constituents so that they can learn on what if they're actually having the desired impact that they want to have, and then tweak things in their program model to make things work better so that they really are getting the results they want to see. For all of you going through, which I think is all or most of you going through the quality mentoring system with Mobius, it's also part of your best practices, not to run the Vermont Mentoring Surveys, but to actually run some type of yearly evaluation. So this would make it an easy way to meet that guideline. And then the great thing that Benji mentioned as well is it allows Mobius to gather some statewide data so that we can make a stronger case to our funders so that we can get more funding for you to distribute through the Vermont Mentoring grants. So what's new with the surveys is really from taking the feedback we got from all the mentoring programs that ran or decided not to run the statewide mentoring surveys last year, was making them a lot shorter. So all the surveys, which you'll see in a little bit, are 1 page in length, but all multiple choice questions. And the questions all correlate to one another in terms of the constituent groups. So you'll see questions that go straight from mentee to mentor to parent to teacher. And the question looks very similar, asked to the same people so we can gather the same data, all about how this mentee is doing from the different groups that you're going to be surveying. The system for surveying, we also made a lot easier this year by going through SurveyMonkey, which you'll see, to add questions so that mentoring programs that want to ask beyond but just the base level are going to be able to do that with ease. It's all available online so that programs can take it. All your constituents can take the survey online if you want, not just mentors anymore. And then we also have paper format for those that want them. But the Program Leadership Council and Mobius really wanted to look at wanted to figure out main focus areas for programs to be evaluating. And so we decided to focus on 6 different areas of focus that we felt all mentoring programs, regardless of model, school-based, community-based, if they have special focuses, that all programs can really say these are aspects that we should be gathering data on, these are aspects that we should be hitting home with our mentees and seeing a difference being made. So those focus areas that you see on the screen, mentee resiliency, pro-social skills, future aspirations, connectedness to community, attitude towards school, and matching program feedback. Just to highlight a little bit just with attitude towards school, in the past surveys we were asking for very specific attendance and grade data. That's saying that from feedback from programs we heard that that's really hard for folks to gather from schools, and we've been sort of going to bat for you with funders to help them realize that that's not realistic right now for everybody to get data from every single school that their mentee attends. Obviously, if programs have figured out how to do that, that's great, and we want them to continue to get as much data as they can. You'll see with us, the more data we can gather, the better. But the survey would take care of that aspect of gathering that data of how the kid actually feels about school, which we think is the important thing. Not as much every single child's grades, but the more data you can get, the better. Just so folks know as well, we're recording this, so if you want to see these slides as well, we can make them available we can send them out to folks. But really, what will accompany this will also be a toolkit, which we'll be finishing up today or tomorrow, so that you'll be able to see everything. So don't worry about having to take too many notes here. So the aspects that are the same, that was what was different. The aspects that are the same this year with this new revision is that you still have 4 constituent types that we're looking for folks to survey, really focusing on the mentee and mentor, which we'll get into a little bit more, but still parent and guardian and teacher and counselor. And then the survey intervals are still a pre-match survey that we're hoping folks can use to get baseline data. So that would be a survey that you actually run once you have a kid that's going to be matched and a mentor that's going to be matched, running that pre-match survey with as many of the constituents as you can, but at least the mentee and mentor before they ever actually meet. So you can get some baseline data. The during match, which is what we're going to focus on going through today, which we're looking for people to run starting in the spring, which would happen once a year while that match is in progress. And then the post-match, which would be once a match ends, running that survey and really using that survey as part of the closure technique that you're using to help that child and that mentor establish closure with their match. That would be, we're looking at that more as when a child is sort of ending with your program. If you're rematching them, we think that you should avoid, don't do the post-match with them, just keep them going on the during match, because we want to really get the impact that your program itself is having, and we're not at the point right now where we can gather the data on sort of each match is happening. So post-match would be when a match is actually ending and that mentee is not going to get rematched. So getting into the meat of things, creating your own program survey. So what we'll do is I want to show you where actually on our website, I'm going to see if this hyperlink will work. You can look at the base mentor during survey, the mentor, mentee, parent and guardian, teacher and counselor surveys. So we did everything through SurveyMonkey. So I'm going to show you, I'm just going to click here, and Benji, you can let me know if that popped up. Do you see the web window? Yes, that's what I'm looking for. All right, great. So this is our homepage now. You can see one way you can do it is just click on the first slider you see on our homepage. Another way is if you go to Resources for Programs, you can go down to Vermont Mentoring Surveys, and it'll bring you to the new Vermont Mentoring Surveys page. And we have some information, but you can jump right to the links here. So you can see that these are, what this is a sample. We don't want folks actually using these links to administer, but we want people to be able to see what they're doing. So if you look at the Mentee survey, you'll see that this is actually just a one-page survey. This is the sample version, so once again, don't email this out to your programs. You'll have unique survey links for your programs. But it has all of the questions that hopefully many of you have actually looked through from the email we sent out. All multiple choice, the same scale for the majority of questions, a strongly agree, a disagree, and a strongly disagree. We decided to take out the neutral response to really make people have to decide how they feel about things. Obviously, people can skip survey questions, but if you look through, it's not that long. It's one page. They do all these questions, and at the end, they click Done, and that's the end of the survey. So really simple, not too hard to have people fill out. So that's the Mentee one. There's a mentor and counselor, mentor, a parent, guardian, and teacher. If we actually just gonna jump back here, just to give you an idea of the correlation of questions. If you look, the first question, I'm able to, for a mentee, able to make and keep friends easily. If you look at the mentor survey as well, first question, my mentee has a positive conflict resolution. My mentee is helpful and compassionate. It really translates to, the mentee saying, when I see someone need help, I'm able to help them. I tend to bounce back quickly after hard times. My mentee tends to bounce back quickly after hard times. They really correlate from one question to another. So if we just go back to PowerPoint, those are ways in which you can look at all of them on the web page. You can sort of see. So what we want you to do is, ideally, all of you are looking to use this as the base survey, but we also want you to be able to add questions to it. All those are multiple choice questions. We wanted to make it very simple so that programs could then go ahead and, if they want to, add questions that are specific to their program. So all of you should look at the base survey and figure out if that's enough information for you. It's going to hit on those 6 key focus areas that we talked about. But if you want to add short answer questions or any other multiple choice questions, it's completely open to you. Obviously, we want to make sure that you're not creating a survey that's too long for your constituents to actually want to take. But the way it's going to work is that once you look at it, with making sure you give Benji at least a week from the time you want to start implementing your survey. You should email Benji and give him the wording and the answer key for what questions you want to add. He will actually take that, add them to the base survey, which I'll show you what a sample would look like in a second here, and then send you your unique links for your program. So you'd have a unique link for the mentor survey, the mentee survey, the teacher and the counselor, and the parent and guardian. So you'd have 4 links from the during survey, and then the post and pre is the same as well. So the surveys would be unique to your program. So if you wanted to actually add questions to the survey would look something along this way. So you still have the base survey, all that information, and then instead of being able to click done, you'd actually have to click next. But I got to type in a Mentee ID number, which we'll get to in a second and talk a little bit more about, because it's a required question. And then you click next, and the survey questions for your program would show up right there. And so you'd be able to actually add in some other aspects. And that can be as many questions as you want, but you can see that there's short answer questions. There's questions that you can check all of the following that apply, and then there's also multiple choice. So hopefully that'll make things a lot easier for you to actually use this as a base survey, but at the same time get your own survey questions there if you have certain aspects of your program you want to evaluate. The other thing to point out is that you actually can add text here that's unique to your program, because each program is going to have their own links. So if you want to have a message saying, thanks so much for taking this, this is how long it will take, you can put it whatever you want in this area here, and it will actually have your program's name up here. So that's a great feature that we were able to add by going through SurveyMonkey this year. So any questions right now just from that? I mean, if you want to type in anything, I'll keep on plugging through here, and we'll have plenty of time to come back to everything. But if anybody had anything they wanted to shout out, feel free. And Leslie, I did meet you again, so if you want to, I can unmute you. But alrighty.
I'm good. I'll try to mute myself.
This is Jackie.
Okay. Yes, Jackie.
So I have some specific questions I'd like to ask around level of trust. And it seems to me that there might be some that are redundant or that I might want to ask differently. So you have specific questions lined out. And if I see some that are overlapping that I think or I'd like to ask in a different way, can I do that? Or are we staying with these questions and then I would add the questions that I have at the end of it?
Yeah, so we want everybody to stay with this core set of questions, and this is based on the feedback and what we saw. We're putting together actually a report on what we gathered last year from the statewide surveys and everybody using their own surveys. And the issue we had was the difference in phrasing of the questions made it so that the questions we thought would correlate between one program and another program in the statewide surveys didn't correlate enough to make it statistically relevant. So in cutting it down to just this few questions, we're hoping that everybody will keep this base level of the surveys and then add upon it.
Okay.
So if we get into just the when aspect here, when to administer surveys and how to do it, in talking with Heather, I'm going to have Heather chime in a second here, but we're looking for folks to define a 4-week window somewhere between April and June, end of June, that works for your program. And we can definitely talk individually if there's something else that works for you, but really having a defined set of times so that we know that the surveys aren't dragging on and we can have data that we're pulling from a certain defined set of time that hopefully works for all mentoring programs. But Heather, do you mind just chiming in real quick about why that 4-week window is important?
Sure. Hi, everyone. This actually, so when we're collecting survey data like this, we do want to try and balance the needs of the program, of course, and in terms of what works, in terms of how your program is run, the time frame. But we also want to keep a relatively consistent process for actually collecting the data. For instance, we wouldn't want to have data that comes in, for some programs it's coming in the fall, for some programs it's coming in late spring, and so on and so forth, because we want to actually be able to have some assurance that it's sort of the same time of year, roughly, same rough part of each program, provided they're all running, I think most are running year-long or at least 9-month long. So that's really the thought there. So we've tried to really balance giving enough time, a month, with, again, trying to corral and keep the data collection around the same period statewide. We are actually, I spoke with Chad, and one of the things that we'll actually take a close look at is making sure that we have figured out how long the students have, the mentees have actually been participating in mentoring, because that will be really important to also make sure we capture. So hopefully that clarifies things for folks.
Yeah, no, definitely. We're going to get a little bit more into what Heather just talked about with tracking the length of time mentees, just to sort of another idea. If we can gather more data, the better, without making it really take up too much time for either the people you're surveying or the program staff. So to get into the who section, ideally you're going to survey all your constituents. We realize that depending on the program and the model, it may be really hard to get to the parents or the teachers, or the fact that you may have a teacher that has 6 of your kids in their class and they don't have time to fill out 6 surveys. Maybe they do, and that's great, but really wanting to focus on the mentee and mentor, and you can figure out the best way to get the other constituents' feedback with meeting with the teacher one-on-one or what makes sense. But we'll talk a little bit more about percentage of feedback we need to get in a little bit. But the formats, once again, online surveys through SurveyMonkey. You're going to email Benji first when you want to actually use them, and he'll create the customized links for you. And then the other option is actually going through a paper version if you have people that you need to mail the surveys out to. And the paper version is just on our downloadable materials, which is under Resources for Programs. And you actually can see them here. They're PDF links. And you can just click on it. It comes up as a PDF. The questions are worded exactly the same. The scales are exactly the same as you will see in the SurveyMonkey, so it still will translate. The issue being, if you do paper surveys, then to enter the data, you would actually have to go in and enter the data yourself into the SurveyMonkey as that constituent. But it's an option for folks that don't want to do things online. So it's still an option. So to get a little bit more into just the mentee number part, so at the top of the surveys, you see that the only required question is mentee number. And that's a key part for us to be able to track mentees over time. And Heather, you mind talking a little bit more just about why tracking mentees over time is important?
Sure. So I was talking a little bit with Chad about this, I think yesterday, and I will try and avoid statisticalese. One of the things that you might see is when you're looking at pre-post data and you haven't really tracked students, so you're actually just looking at, like, okay, at time 1, looking at all of our students, this is what our data looked like. At time 2, this is what it looked like. The problem with that is that you're really actually just making a guess that any kind of consistency or inconsistency in mentees is what's really accounting for what you might see. And a much stronger way to actually get this information is to actually make sure that you're hooking up the second piece, the post data, with the mentee from time 1. And I have a background in psychology and in research psychology, and so it's very important to certainly protect privacy and confidentiality and all those kinds of issues, and I think Chad's going to talk about that a bit. But in terms of actually being able to really look at what seems to truly be happening as a function of mentees' experiences, this is a much stronger way to go about looking at it.
Great. Thank you. So that's an aspect that is going to make it so that you're not going to be able to send out a bulk email to all of your mentors saying, here's the survey, fill it out. You'll have to send out an individual email to each mentor with their mentee's number. But in my experience with emailing mentors, if you send them a personal email, even if it's a form email, you're going to get a lot better response. So I want to get in a little bit to how to actually find that mentee number. The great thing about that also is that it allows us on the statewide level to say, what is the effect of mentoring on mentees that have been in a program for 5 years, for 4 years, for 1 year, because we'd be able to actually take that mentee number and correlate it to track it to that link to the time of the match. So for those of you using the Vermont Mentoring Database, we've created an easy report for you to look at. So I'm going to just log in real quick as a fake user here. So I'm logged in as our fake user. So you'd actually go down to the report section and go to shared reports, because then it's nice to create it and share it. And you'd go over to the Mentee survey report, the Mentee number report, and run it. And it pulls it up, and there you have. So every Mentee in the database has a unique number, even for different programs. That's why some of them are 12 and some of them are 1,500 something. But it allows you to actually export this out, or you can email mentors directly, and I can email Tom Brady from here saying, here's the email, and paste in that his Mentee number he needs to put in for Tim Tebow is 24. It allows for you to be, I mean, you always could go back and refer to it, but if you wanted to have, Mentee numbers assigned and then not go back and look at who filled out what, that can sort of be on you to figure out, all right, I want this to be anonymous enough that I'm not going to go and double check everybody and see who filled it out. But it also allows programs that want to be able to go back and say, all right, I know these 15 mentors out of these 30 haven't filled it out. I'm only going to follow up with these 15 mentors that haven't filled out the survey yet. So for programs that aren't using the database, we're asking for you to do this on your own. And if you have a database you're using and you can get to a query like that and it spits out a Mentee number, great. If you're a small program and you're just using an Excel spreadsheet, we can email you a basic spreadsheet to do this yourself, where you can actually just assign numbers to your mentees, put in their gender, put in the mentee name, the mentor name, and email address if you want to have it in the spreadsheet. That'll allow you to track it, and I'll get in a little bit to what that would look like when you send it to us, because we actually don't want to see your mentee name or number at our level. So that's what we're looking at for the mentee number. And we definitely can answer more questions on that later on to clarify that. But it's a new thing that we haven't done in the past that I think will really benefit us over the years and allow you to also track your information a lot better over the years as well. So in administering the surveys, it really, a lot of you have done surveys before. We want to make sure that everybody in the state is doing the surveys in the same way, because we want to make sure that the data is consistent. So it depends on the age of the mentee, or if we start with the mentee surveys and how you implement them. You have the option, if you have older teens that can take surveys on their own, or 10-year-olds that can handle it, they can sit in a computer lab. You can set them up. You can type in their mentee number for them. They can take it online. They can fill it out on a sheet of paper and give it back to you, and you can just put their mentee number on it and enter it yourself. But really, we want mentees to be doing it on their own and be in a spot where they're not disturbed by their peers. You don't want to have 4 mentees sitting at a table together all answering the same questions. You want them to have some space so they really can think about it. But we want the mentor coordinator to be the one, program staff to be the one that's doing the administering of the survey. Obviously, if you're a mentor coordinator and you actually mentor one of the kids, you shouldn't be the one doing the survey with that child. But for younger kids, if you need to sit with the mentee, that's fine. If you need to read the survey out loud to the mentee and actually record the questions, record the answers yourself, that's fine as well. If you put in short answers, make sure that you're actually recording the mentee's response word for word and not paraphrasing, and you're getting the mentee's opinion there. So when you look at the survey, there's a few questions in there that may confuse the kid. A question of, do you think people in your community care about you? Something, I'm paraphrasing it, but a child might not know what the word community means or how to interpret it. We're going to really take the same policy as the YRBS, the Youth Risk Behavior Surveys, that kids have taken in school, and say that if a kid asks a question, you can't provide the kid the answer. You can't say, well, by community I mean your town, your school. What you can do is ask them what they think community means. And whatever they say, that's how they interpret it, that's great. So if they say, I think it means my school, your answer is yes. If they say, I think it means my neighborhood, your answer is yes. Kids also skip questions if they need to. None of the questions besides the mentee number are required. Obviously, we want everybody to answer every question, but if the kid's really struggling and it's really throwing them for a loop, they can just skip it, and that's fine. Another aspect that Heather brought up, which I thought was great, is just reminding to let you know, if mentees are struggling with the same question pretty often, just take note of it. We're going to send out a feedback survey later in the summer, and we'd love to know if every single kid struggled with this one question, then probably we need to revise that question next time around. So just take note of that. For administering the survey to others, you're going to need, as I mentioned before, email out the link for your program that's unique for your program and the Mentee number that's unique for every match to each constituent. So the other thing to keep in mind too, because Mobius, all this data is underneath the Mobius SurveyMonkey login. When you have short answer questions, we don't want to be able to identify what mentee the answers are about if a mentor or a parent or a teacher are taking the survey. So really, when you do the training, when you're talking to people, have them use the phrase my mentee, my child, the student, instead of saying Johnny is struggling with this. I will show you in a second what the results that get spit out on our side and how it is anonymous to us and how we're able to gather the data in aggregate and not know who's who on our side, even though you'll be able to know if you want on your side. So just a reminder to do that, because that's something we actually realized last year we didn't do a good job of educating everybody on. So Heather's going to help me out a little bit in this as well. We want to make sure that the data that you're gathering from programs for your program is statistically relevant. So we want to make sure that you gather enough of the data. Ideally, we want everybody to aim for 100% of everybody that they're surveying, especially for smaller programs. You know, we need a higher percentage to make it relevant. We realize 100% is unlikely for you to get, even with your mentee and mentors. So we put up some percentages up there that we think would be the ideal return rate, so we can make sure that you have data that you can use for your program. So Heather, do you mind just talking a little bit about just why a higher percentage is needed for those?
Sure. A higher percentage for mentee and mentor?
Well, just in general, why we need a high percentage to return rate to make things statistically relevant. Yeah,
sure. So, sorry, my own question has gotten me off. I lost my train of thought. When you go to actually use information the way that Mobius would like to, which is, pulling information from different sites across a variety of different sites, you want to make sure that you have enough information from each site so that it's a good representation of what's happening at that site. So for instance, if you just got 2 surveys back out of 15 mentees and mentors, that probably would not be, that might not and probably wouldn't be a good generalizable set of information that really captures what's going on for mentees as a whole in that program. We came up with the 75%, just sort of, as Chad said, 100% would be ideal, but for very large programs, that's obviously probably not going to be a reality. And so we're trying to, again, balance reality with the needs of the statistician and coming up with something that's kind of in the middle. We lean more towards mentee and mentor data because it's more important for Mobius at this point in terms of the evaluative process. And also, if you were going to go with just collecting, I would say, half of the mentees and mentors, you'd want to do something a little more sophisticated, which is to actually randomly sample out of your group who those half would be. And we certainly are not advocating or in a place to do that at this point. And I think, Chad, you can chime in, but I think I'm pretty sure that's why we actually sort of downgraded the importance, if you will, of the parent and teacher surveys, even though, of course, that information is ultimately important as well.
Yeah, I think just with the parent-teacher, I realized in talking to programs how hard it is to actually gather that data at that level. I mean, I think 75% really would be what we need, but I think 50%, we should be shooting for 100 with everything. But I don't want to discourage programs from trying to get that data. I think that the way the survey is set up this year, that hopefully things can be easier and people can do it on the fly. It won't take long. It shouldn't take more than 10 minutes for just the base survey. And we can look down the road if we actually are able, and programs feel they're able to get a higher percentage. But I felt like a 50% mark would really be a good thing to shoot for without discouraging people. And again, I mean, this is data. Mobius, if we had 1,000 surveys returned, we might have enough data that we need. But if your program only had 20%, we might be able to get the statewide data we need, but it wouldn't be valid for you. And we really want these evaluations to not only help what Mobius is trying to do, but really help you. I mean, that's the main goal, is really help you improve your program based on the feedback you get. So survey results. So this is another really exciting thing. I know no one really, I mean, maybe some of you do, maybe Heather does, but I think tabulating results might not be what you're really looking for, and sometimes by doing surveys, you end up creating more work for yourself. But the way we're doing it through SurveyMonkey is really exciting because the results are going to be tabulated for you in Excel spreadsheets. And so I can give you an example if I can actually get out of here. So we can get the results for you in multiple ways. So one, if this Benji took the survey a few times, and you can see that each one of these is broken down by question of the survey. So, you know, that's the Mentee number, but your first question, you're able to get, all right, I'm able to keep friends easily. You know, this is the percentages that break down with the number of mentees that answered, how many skipped the question, and then you get a nice little pie chart here. You even can get out to, you know, the short answer questions. You can see how people do as well. But it provides all that information out there for you, and it really is easy for you to then to share with other people that you want to share the information with. If you wanted to look at it in a different way, you can look at all the responses on one page, one spreadsheet. So, you know, first question, I'm able to keep friends easily. You can see how all the mentees responded. If you want to look at it that way, you can look at it by question, or you can look at it sort of all aggregate there. If we, what am I doing here? I want to go back to from current slide. So because that isn't going to be going to your email and your account directly because it's linked to Mobius's survey account, what we'll do is during the time that that 4-week period or less if you want, that you're evaluating your constituents, Benji's going to send you a summary that's basically the breakdown, whatever way you want it there between those two ways or both, for each one of the surveys you're running for each of your constituents. So that if you want to say, you know, I want to see who's filled it out so far, I want to know, you can go ahead and do it that way and follow up with people you know, or you can at least just see, you know, I got 10 out of 20, I got 15 out of 20. So every Friday, Benji will send you the results, and at the end of your 4-week period, when you tell Benji you're done, he'll send you all the results. You'll have all the data there, and you can play with it the way you want to. So that makes it a lot easier for evaluating the data, and it makes it a lot easier for Mobius because then we can actually have everybody's data from the get-go, and we don't have to bug you for it while you're busy winding down the school year. You saw also with those spreadsheets, we don't see anybody's name, so we never will see anybody's name. All we see is the Mentee number, and we don't know what Mentee number correlates to who. And in doing that, I can show you one other thing. If you don't have the Mobius, if you're not using a paid user of the Vermont Mentoring database, what we'll ask you to send us is just Mentee number and the date the person joined the program. And that allows us to get that data. So we won't know what number is associated to what youth. Oh, actually, what's that? Okay. And we'll actually be adding another column to this, just gender as well. So we have that. Benji just reminded me. So that's a little bit included. We'll send this to you. And so, I mean, if you need, and if you have your own Mentee ID information already, you can send this to us, and we'll work with you to make this happen. But we really just want to know the date that the person joined the program, not when they get rematched, just when they actually joined your program, and the Mentee number. So let me just hop back here. So that's sorry, I probably jumped ahead a little bit there. And so for people that use the full database, we actually don't need you to send that information to us because we can look at it through our sort of overall level, which doesn't allow us to look at Mentee names and contact information and anything. It just allows us to look at the start date of the program and the Mentee number. So we don't need you to send that, but for the non-database users, when you finalize your survey, we'll be asking you to send that spreadsheet to Benji with the start date, the gender, and the Mentee number correlated to each one. So we have that information when things come through. So that's actually all I have. Let's make sure we got plenty of time here. I think we have got about 20 minutes here for questions. So I'm going to make sure everybody's unmuted. Feel free to hop in and ask any questions you have, and we'll go from there.
I have a question. This might be sort of a question for Heather. I'm not sure, but one of the progress reports I had to write for a grant was they were asking if we use results-based accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Would this survey respond to that? Result-based? Okay.
Yeah. So RBA is actually technically a little bit more of a formal assessment and movement, but you could certainly use the results of this to support that you A, are aware of RBA, and B, are moving towards that. And then the other piece, I know, for instance, that Serve Vermont offers RBA training at a state level, so you might want to consider, just looking into that. But as a reviewer, I would be very much excited to see this kind of information. And results-based action, sounds like very fancy, but it's really doing this kind of stuff. So, and then using the information, of course, to actually help improve your program, things like that.
So, just as a follow-up to that, is that, I mean, if a bunch of us are being asked to look at results-based accountability, is that something that maybe you through Mobius could do a mini training on and just help us understand how this survey relates to RBA? So
I can hop in there. I mean, I think one of the things we're looking at is trying to see if we're going to move towards RBA formatting for the the Vermont Mentoring Grant, and if so, we definitely would be providing training in the process for mentoring programs. It would help clarify things with the reporting process of what we're looking for mentoring programs to do. So if we're going to be moving in that direction, we definitely will help set up the trainings for it.
This is Jackie. I want to say I'm in the middle of an RBA training, which is actually a 4-day, half-day training, 4 days, 4 mornings a week. And it's a great way of looking at how we're making an impact. And, of course, I'm using the mentoring lens as I'm going through it. I think it would be fantastic for Mobius to offer an RBA training for all of our mentoring programs. It would really bring us in line with not only funders' requirements, but really thinking about how data impacts our programs.
Yeah, I would actually, Heather, I would actually strongly agree. And Chad, I don't know, you may already be aware, you and Benji, but the Serve Vermont, which does all the AmeriCorps funding for the state, actually offers a series of, and that might be what you're taking advantage of, Jackie, I'm not sure, but they offer a series of training events. So it might not be a bad idea to get in touch with them. There might be someone that we could hook up with to do that.
Yeah, actually we're doing the full training from Better Benchmarks for Vermont. We have a trainer from United Way. And it's, it really applies to a lot of different programs. But when we're looking at mentoring, we have our unique set of ways of thinking about things and trying to figure out how we're impacting change when it's not necessarily easy to do.
And we actually have an insider in Benchmarks for Better Vermont, the woman that had Katie's position before her, Hillary, is actually working there. So we have some good resources, and that's definitely something I'll keep in mind and look into for everybody and let you all know.
That would be great.
Catherine had asked the question how this survey would actually change the reporting process for grants. So right now, conducting the statewide survey is not a requirement if you're receiving the Vermont Mentoring Grant funding. Right now, that may change down the road, but what it does is it really makes it easier for you to report on the aspects that are required in that grant. All the aspects of the grant that are required, the survey hits on them, so it makes it a really easy process for you if you run the survey and you get the results of your percentages you're looking for. It makes it so that that information we already have would be a lot easier. We'll see how this works this year and see how it works going forward and what the funders say in terms of what they're looking for. But right now, it's not required. It's highly encouraged. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, this is Katie. I have a question about implementing the surveys and who administers them. You guys said you'd prefer if the mentoring coordinator did it. So we have a really good relationship with the school district, and the guidance counselors that work with our mentees actually have offered and administer the surveys for us, and I'm wondering if that's still okay or if you prefer that I go do it.
I actually think, I mean, Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's even better.
Yeah, I mean, they're totally, like, they're not associated with the mentoring program, so that's why we kind of like
as long as you're in touch with them to help them make sure they're on the same page with the training, sort of what we just talked about not answering questions and things like that. I'm assuming they are. They probably are the ones that do the youth risk behavior survey with them as well. But yeah, as long as they're trained in the same way that you would be, I think that's totally fine. It saves some time for you, and also I think takes them another step removed from the program, so that they really feel free to answer the way they want to.
Okay,
Katie, how did you get them to offer to do that?
I just asked really nicely.
Oh, wow.
Our mentoring, I should say, our program's really small too. So if you have, 100 mentees, it's not the same as, 20. It's a little bit different, but we got a new person who's the head of guidance, and she's wonderful, and she's like, well, why don't you just give me the surveys, and I'll make sure the guidance counselors that work with them get them accomplished by the time you need them by, and they did it, and it was great.
Wow.
So aside from asking really nicely and saying please and saying what else can I do for you, I don't know.
I find that counselors see mentoring as an extension of their services.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's the ideal world, so really trying to build that relationship seems like a really important strategy that we can all be doing.
So anybody else have any other questions? I have some other stuff I can bring up because I know I've heard from other people just that are off the call that may have had some other questions that you haven't answered yet. Anybody else have any questions or any other thoughts about it?
Oh, Chad, I did have one more question, and maybe this is silly. This is Katie again. If we are administering the surveys on paper and then one person is entering all the data, I just wanted to make sure it's not limited to one entry per IP or something like that.
That is a question for Benji, and I will let him answer that.
Sure, Katie. So if that's the case, just let me know in advance, and we can set up your version of the survey so that multiple entries can be put in through one IP.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Good point. Thank you. I'll bring up another question. I know that some folks I've talked about this are really, we're still working with them to talk about that people being able to fill out service anonymously and what that, the benefits of not being able to doing it totally anonymously and having the Mentee number. But if that's a really big point that you're hung up on, you can talk to us, and we actually could send you your survey results with the Mentee number not included, and therefore the results that you receive would be totally anonymous to you. If that's something that you're really concerned about, I think it's something that would possibly be missing out on an opportunity to do some analysis of the data, but it is an option out there that we can accommodate if that's something you're really concerned about. So, any other questions? Otherwise, we can wrap up a little bit early.
I just want to, this is Jackie, I just want to say I think this is really great. You're creating a scenario that is going to be really supportive and flexible enough. I really appreciate being able to add new questions, and this is going to be really useful. I really appreciate you doing it.
Well, thank you. And definitely keep
yeah, I agree.
Keep track of thoughts you have. I mean, these, as you see, this is way different than what we had last year based on the feedback we received from programs. We're open to feedback. We think this is closer to what we're hoping to end up with, but I'm sure we'll be making some small adjustments here and there. But keep feedback coming, and definitely start getting in touch with Benji when you know what you want to do. Even if you aren't sure what questions you want to add yet, but you know you're going to want to add it, give him a heads up so he knows. But do give him a 1-week heads up in terms of once you actually have your information complete, so that he has time to add it. But that's
Chad?
we got this. Yes.
Hi, it's Leslie. I just figured out how to unmute myself.
Great. Sorry about that, Leslie.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
With the ongoing survey, Suppose you have kids that are just picking up a mentor, say, right now or during the month of April, and you're going to conduct the survey, say, end of April, beginning of May. Is that still valid information because we'll have the start date there?
Yeah, so the start date, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, so I mean, if you have people that you're about to match, do the pre-survey with them before they're even matched to get that baseline, and then you can go ahead and do the during survey just to get them in the habit of doing a during survey at this time of year every year, if they're matched before you start doing the during survey. It's the same thing with the during and the post, the pre and the post. We can add questions to those as well. So take a look at those as well. You'll see a little bit of difference in those compared to the other ones.
And we can have this available, we have this available on, these questions available now? Is that right?
Yeah, so that on the website you can go on and go to the resources for programs and the Vermont Mentoring Surveys, and you'll see all the questions there and SurveyMonkey and the PDF form, and you can take a look at them and play around with it. Just remember that that's not the links that you actually will be sending out to your programs. Those are there just for you to read and look at and sort of explore. And yeah, once you want to get going on it, just let Mentee know and he'll set it up for you. So.
I'm sorry, you got to tell me again where I can find it on the website. I'm going to reports new and it's not there. Where will it be?
So if you're on the website, and I will show you actually where it is. If you go
That's
to
not the VT mentoring. That's not VT mentoring.
So if you go to the website right here, if you guys are looking at my screen, and you go to resources for programs, and you go to Vermont Mentoring Surveys right there, it will bring you right to the Vermont Mentoring Surveys page, and all the information is there. We're going to be putting this webinar right now, after this, up online, and we're in the process of finalizing a toolkit, which will be available there as well. But if you have trouble and you can't find something, definitely feel free to just give us a call.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then that wraps it up. So thanks for everything you all do. And Heather, thank you so much for being on the call and helping through this process. She's been instrumental in making this possible and having someone with great knowledge. So, all righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye.